Southside 457.
Did you know that the South Side on Lamar is a National Historic Building?
This building tells a story.
I need a story to connect to with my heart.
There are so many stories in this building.
I wanted to teach other people how to naturally love themselves, and so I ventured into the field of opening my own spot.
There are people in this building with a passion to share what they know.
When I share my knowledge and my skills and my gift, I'm serving my purpose.
Preachers, teachers, architects, attorneys, engineers, artists of all kinds in this building.
What makes this place tick to me and makes it exciting is the combination of so many different kinds of people.
It's like a melting pot.
It's like a melting pot.
15 years, I've never regretted being here at Southside.
Welcome to the Southside 457 podcast. I'm your host, Walter Johnson Jr. Let's get it on. You can't miss the princess.
Listen, Linda, listen.
Southside 457.
Welcome to the Southside 457 podcast. I'm your host, Walter Johnson Jr. And today we have another very special guest. Principal of the St. Philip School and Community Center, Miss Kellee Murrell. Welcome to the show.
Hey, I appreciate you. Thank you.
How are you?
I'm doing great. Doing great.
Two hands for ladies, I guess. So, I interviewed Dr. Flowers, and he's like, you got to get Kellee. You know, so a lot of people don't. One of the first things that I ask people is how they got to this building.
Yeah.
And what some of because you don't just end up at this building.
Yeah.
You get invited to this building, or you don't bump into it.
Yeah.
So what was your first experience with the South Side on Lamar?
Yeah. So this is a funny story. So I did some remodeling in my home and actually lived here. You
lived at the South Side?
I lived on the fourth floor.
Oh,
of
wow.
the South
That's a
Side
surprise.
Lamar.
I had no clue.
This was during COVID with my family for a year and a half. And even
I can't believe I didn't.
Even to this day, my son says, yeah, you don't miss living over there? We do miss living over there. Just the location, the sound. I'm a New Yorker. So the sound reminds me of New York, the busyness, the, just the community. The rhythm, taking the elevator up. It has a whole New York City, just city vibe. So we loved living over here. And
how long did you live here again? You said a year?
18 months.
18 months.
18 months and great experience being downtown. It was close to St. Philip, so that was a win-win for us. And my husband works for the city of Dallas, so just close by. But it was a wonderful, positive experience. Loved it. If I could, I would have like a little side apartment over here.
She said side apartment.
A little side apartment.
Little mommy getaway.
When I want to step away from the kids, come over here. I actually even had a massage. There's a lady on the second floor that
touching skin.
Yeah, went over there.
We call her the princess of Southside.
The
Southside princess.
And so yeah. Dynamic experience. Love it.
So you said you're from New York.
I am.
So how did you get to Dallas from New York, and how did you end up at St. Philip's?
Yeah. So I grew up in the Bronx, New York.
Right on.
Lived there my whole life till went to college in Atlanta, went to HBCU, Clark Atlanta.
Clark.
Shout out to the Clark Atlanta University. And from there, I was an education major and was trying to figure out, what's next steps for me. And actually, I didn't want to be an education major because both my parents were teachers. And I said, oh, I don't want to be a teacher. But the more I did it, the more I had passion for kids. Like I just loved being around them. And so when I came to Dallas, I came to get my master's and thought I was going back to Atlanta. I was like, because Atlanta was really kicking at the time and thought I was going back.
What school did you go to in Dallas?
I'm at SMU now, but I went to UT, Arlington, and Dallas Seminary.
Gotcha.
So stayed here, ended up getting married to a Dallasite, who this is He's not going nowhere.
He's not going
He's not going nowhere. This is what it is. And I went to St. Philip's because I started at a private school in Oak Cliff, Tyler Street Christian Academy, and they just closed. And then I was teaching high school there, and then went to Richardson ISD. And I taught there. I was a teacher, assistant principal, and principal in Richardson ISD. But my husband was a community prosecutor in South Dallas. And he was like, hey, I don't think you ain't heard about this school, St. Philip's. And I'm like, okay, in South Dallas. We live in North Dallas anyway. So he was like, you gotta hear about this school. So we ended up sending our kids to St. Philip's. And when I went there, I was like, oh, this is really where I want to be. The mixture of faith, the mixture of, high quality or exceptional education, just the culture was everything I was looking for in education. It was everything that it aligned with my beliefs about how kids excel. And so when I went, met Dr. Flowers, of course, and you all know him.
Yeah.
But I was still in Richardson.
What was that meeting like? Pause. What was the meeting like?
Dr. Flowers he's passionate, and he's quiet. But what I appreciate about him is that when it's time to speak up, he speak up.
Yeah.
And you need people like that. We see the change that happened around St. Philip's because when it's time to speak up, he speak up. He ain't loud like me. He ain't, he ain't all this energy that I have. But, and he not from South Dallas, but, he see need, but he from a similar place.
Yeah.
And that's how both of us vibe very well with the people and community of South Dallas because we from a similar place and a similar background. So long story short, I was principal in Richardson at a great school, but it was kind of like a mixed setup. And Dr. Flowers said, hey, you want to come over here and be the principal? And I was like, yeah, that's what I want to do.
So he just kind of opened the door for you?
Called me one day and said, hey, you interested? I met with him before and just was trying to pick his brain about how did you get here? So that's how I knew the story about his history and background. And then one day he just called me and was like, hey, we're having a transition. You think you want to be the principal? And I've been there. This is my 10th year.
Right on. So I heard seminary.
Yep.
So tell me about that and how does that play? How does your faith play a part when you're working at St. Philip's versus when you're at the other schools? And share that dynamic. Yeah. So at the other schools, you got to kind of keep your faith on a low key. But and you went to seminary school, so it's like, how low key can you get?
Yeah. So you have to live it out instead of speaking it out.
There you go.
You have to kind of, be an example by the way you treat people. But I'm human too. So, I can get ratchet like the rest of them. But
I got reflexes too.
But, you trying to live it out and pour into kids, those especially that people don't see, the outcast. And those are the kids that I'm most passionate about. And so when I was in public school, I did a step team. I didn't know nothing about a step team, but that's where the kids, who needed something. Right, who needed something. I'm the chaperone, I'm the sponsor of the step team.
That's that energy right there.
So we can step. Right. I'm like, yeah, let's create one. We go to Big T getting t-shirts and, whatever we needed to do for the kids. Yeah. And I really feel like that's how my faith was lived out in that season. And it was lived out in being a person that people needed at that time, and somebody who was down to earth, but somebody who could give you good feedback and good insight and, how to live, the way God wants you to live. And so that was public school. But at St. Philip's, what I love about it is it's the foundation of who we are. So it's the baseline. Everything else builds upon that. So
I like what you said. How we are.
Yeah.
You've embraced. I mean, it's natural. Go ahead. Go ahead. I like that.
It's the foundation, and because it's the foundation, it's not. I know a lot of people. Well, it's a school. Yes, and academics are important, but creating good people who use their academics to help somebody else is the outcome.
I was having this conversation, this same one, yesterday about academics and versus, but you said it better than me. You said this before. I said it for the first time.
I'm passionate about it. Like, it's not just about being smart.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
not just about going to school.
It's
a
not
bunch
the
of-
curriculum.
Yeah, it's
and-
not the curriculum. I'm like, you can go anywhere and get that. That's the unique thing about St. Philip's. But it's to say, hey, God did something in me and I use the gifts, the talents, the education, the finance, whatever I have to build up the next person. And I firmly believe that God put St. Philip's in South Dallas for that reason. And I tell parents all the time, you can't come to South Dallas and don't see need and don't feel that you are responsible to do something. Like, we're not just out here playing. We out here trying to see what we could do to not just make our lives better, but somebody else's life better.
Yeah, like there's a brother, he the way he says it, and it's an acronym. I don't remember the whole acronym, but a part of that acronym is a responsibility to respond.
Yeah.
It's a responsibility to respond.
Yeah.
So that's what you're saying.
Yeah, basically that I just feel like it's, it's more than talk. Like, we got to do, and we have to model that for our kids.
So where did that come from? Like, I know, like, you went to seminary school, but where did that drive and how did your faith get to be where it was to even want to go to seminary school and to have that passion for people and to fulfill that kind of purpose and to keep walking in it instead of saying, I'm sure, with your education and I mean, you've had, a lot of opportunities present themselves. Like Dr. Flowers saw it immediately and said, hey, okay, you want to bring that on over here?
So, I don't know. I'm thinking about my dad. My dad was definitely, but my dad was a little rough around the edges. So he definitely wasn't into faith, but he was into people. Yeah. And he traveled when he was in college, and he was the first person who was like, hey, you got to get to Africa. You got to go see different things. And when you see how other people are living, and we need to try to, help and support. So, when I was young, we started going to a church, and I had never really heard, anything about God because my people seemed.
But how old were you?
I'm 7th grade.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like, I'm telling you, my people wasn't.
That's like 13.
For real.
12, 13.
12, 13. And they wasn't really into that. But my mom had like this kind of like near-death experience. And when I grew up, my parents, we was kind of in the crack epidemic, and in New York in the 80s. So, my dad did a lot of drugs and things like that. And it was seeing the fact that, there are a lot of intelligent people, good people, but in pain. And I know I don't want to be in that pain, but how do I help somebody else? My dad ended up dying when I was 14.
Wow.
And I was in the 9th grade. And from there, I'm just like, I just feel like we could be better. Like, I remember he used to drive us to Harlem, and, he would go copping his drugs and in Harlem. And, you just see so much as a kid. And I'm like, when I'm an adult, I want a different experience for kids. And so that's, my experiences and my pain is really what drives what I do, because I feel like kids should have a different experience, and it's on us as the adults to change that up for them. So that's why I do what I do.
So what was that? What was that experience like at 14, losing your father?
Yeah,
like did it like what like. Did it totally? Did you kind of just say forget it, or did you get angry? What was it like?
Yeah, it was tough. It was really, really tough. And then so my mom, she's a single mom. We now, your whole life is kind of shifted. We living with my grandmothers, like 10 of us in this one house. And if you know anything about New York, we navigate. Kids are navigating their life on their own anyway. We moving through the streets, doing what we doing. But what changed me was a person from the church. It was a lady from the church who
during this season,
and she took interest in me and would just hang out and would take me to plays, expose me to things, and I was a young kid, talking crazy, but she didn't let that stop her. She wasn't like, oh, you got to be this holy Christian. She listened to whatever slang, whatever music. I'm like, yo, listen to this. She would listen to it. And I'm a firm believer, there's some statistic out there that says, it takes like 7 people to pour into the life of a at-risk kid or troubled kid. And I believe that, she is instrumental in changing my life, because she took time to pour into me, and it didn't have to fit a specific mold. And I think that when we're working with kids, especially those that coming from trauma and hard backgrounds, you just got to take them where they're at.
Do you feel like you're that person that she was to you for others?
I hope I am.
Do you feel like that's your responsibility to respond because she responded so well to you?
Right. Yeah. My role has shifted. When I was a teacher, I definitely felt like that was my role. As principal, my role is to
the adults.
It's to the adults, but to get the adults to do that for kids.
Yeah.
Like I was just telling my team the other day, like, hey, every kid at St. Philip's needs an advocate. So I tell that to the kids, that's my intro to them. Have you identified your advocate? Now, you're not going to get with every personality, but you got to find one personality that vibes for you. So when you make a mistake, because you're human and you're going to make a mistake, who speaks well of you? Who, when we all sitting around and we saying, oh, so-and-so, he wilding. Who in there like, he wilding, but this, to speak on your behalf. And I feel like as educators, every kid need an advocate, somebody in that building that's speaking well of one of the kid who will make a mistake. They all gonna make mistakes.
Well, I tell you, my son, he had a lot of advocates because we go in there and talk to them teachers sometimes. Ooh, wee.
Yeah, I'm telling you.
Oh, and me.
And me.
So you gave your life to Christ from this lady?
At this church. She was at this church, yes. Yep, okay. Yep. And she was in my wedding. Like, just that relationship grew. But the other thing she did that I think is dope is she exposed me to things.
Gotcha.
Even though I was a kid in New York, I'd never been to a Broadway play. Never later went, Niagara Falls. There's just a lot of things that kids from urban areas, you can be right next. When I went to Niagara Falls,
yeah, most people in the area.
I'm looking at the kids. I'm like, the falls is right here. It's like 15 minutes from here. I never went there. Yeah. So I think she inspired me, which she probably don't even know, to do what she did for somebody else.
Wow. So, what gave you the passion to teach? Like, because initially you started teaching, and then did you get scholarships or why Clark? And what was she pushing you on that direction? Explain that.
So that's good. I went to Clark Atlanta. My brother went to Morehouse, and we went to drop him off. It's crazy. He had never even been. At the time, this was like a few months before my dad died. My dad was like, oh, you need to go to Morehouse. And so my brother goes to Morehouse. Now my dad's dead. So it's now May, June. We go out to August. School's getting ready to start. We go out to Morehouse. I'm like, oh, okay. I was like, come on, Atlanta. So the other thing, and when I went out there, what made Atlanta amazing was I had never seen Black people wealthy in big houses. From New York, I had only always seen Black people, not broke, but just surviving.
Yeah.
And so when I saw that, I remember when I went to college, I called my mom, like, yo, mom, you ain't gonna believe this. I'm like, these black folks living in big houses. And she'd be like, what? And so I'm like, so that goes back to my belief. I know I ain't answering your question, but that goes back to my belief that representation matters, that kids have to see it to know that they can do it and they can achieve it, But
It gives you a reach.
It does. Like to say, okay, you don't have to. Not every wealthy person is a NFL player. Like, you can be a dentist. You can be you can be something that you enjoy.
The kids see the cookie to reach for it.
That's right. And not always feel like in New York, you always feel like you grinding and surviving and not living. And so when we saw that, we was like, that's dope. So I got to, that's how I got to Atlanta. That's how I went to Clark Atlanta. I didn't get a scholarship at the time. My grandmother helped me my first year, but I eventually got a university scholarship because in high school, like most of us, or maybe just me.
You're just getting through?
Right, I was out here just doing what I need to. And
Look, just give me the paper.
Right, like what I got to do? So that first year.
I need to take this test?
Right, that first year.
I need to get 68 to pass.
That's what it was. What is it? 65, got it.
All right.
So I had to get loans, but what changed was I changed. And I said, I got to get out here and grind. My mom's single mom, and my brother was like, hey, you got to go to these scholarship offices, which I tell anybody, especially at Back College, every day, or at least twice a week, 2-3 times a week. I was at the scholarship office, and I said, I'm not going to skip no class. I was skipping class in high school. So I went to college. I was like, I'm not going to skip any class. I'm going to go to class. So, my grades were great. I ended up getting, and the lady started seeing me, and she was like, oh, okay. And she stopped me one day and was like, hey, you qualify for the Bill and Melinda Gates Scholarship.
All right.
And so I ended up getting that full ride scholarship, and the university gave me a scholarship. So everything was being paid for. And I was an RA. So my room and board was paid for, and that's how I just...
For the people that don't have the college experience, can you tell them what the RA stands for?
Yeah, I'm
it
sorry.
sound like, okay, I know RN is registered nurse.
No, yeah, I was an RA. I was a resident assistant.
Okay, there we go. For the people.
And you get free room and board when you do that, but you got to go back to school early. But you kind of like the principal of your floor of the dorm.
Yeah.
So maybe that was my first start in telling people what to do.
Well, so you started at Clark.
Yeah.
So this is where you got the scholarships.
That's where I got the scholarship.
And then you got your degree from Clark.
Yep.
And then you got another degree?
Yep, I have a master's degree, and that's where I went to Dallas Seminary. So I went to seminary. So I know.
Why seminary?
Yeah, I was shocked too. So when I graduated Clark Atlanta, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I was a history education major, but again, I'm running from teaching. I'm like, I don't really think this is what I want to do. So, and again, my brother was there, and he said, well, you like youth ministry. Maybe you want to do youth ministry. So I said, all right. So I applied, went there, got my master's, and thought I was going to go into youth ministry. And then wasn't really loving that track, and they ended up having like a Christian school administration track. And I was like, all right, that might vibe, because I always was passionate about school. Like when I was a kid, I went, I always wanted to go to a better school, but my folks didn't have the money. So I always wanted like a good school experience for kids. And so I said, okay, yeah, I'm gonna try that. And so that's the track that I went through. And part of that is that I had to do an internship my last year, and that's how I got to Tyler Street Christian Academy in Oak Cliff. I did my internship there. Started teaching.
So you just had a passion for education?
I did.
Or did some people like, I have friends that like, you know what? I don't really know what to do, but you know what? Let me just go ahead and continue the education, because I know I can do that well, and I'm learning while I'm living.
Yeah, I always work with kids,
And it
so I
become-
had a passion for kids. It didn't necessarily have to be education. I couldn't figure out where it was, but I know I wanted to be. When I was my first job in New York was working at New York had a summer youth employment, and I worked at a daycare. So that was my first job, and every other job after that was summer camps and, counselors. So always kind of working with kids. So I knew I wanted to do that. I was passionate about
You felt
kids.
that was your lane.
Yeah, that was, I was good at that, and that was my lane. And I enjoyed it. I like being with kids. But I didn't know if education was really my thing. In college, I did my student teaching. I went into education because I couldn't think, what do you do with kids? And I was like, and I didn't want to do little kids. So, and history was, I loved history. So I said, okay, I'll be a history teacher and did my student teaching. But then after that, I was like, I don't know if I want to do it. And that's how I went to Dallas. But that teaching was still in me. And when I did my internship, they asked me to teach history while I was doing my leadership internship, and came right back in, and I was teaching high school history, and I was teaching seniors, and I was 21 years old. It was just a bunch of kids running this high school class.
Wow.
Because I was young. But it fueled my passion. And said, I like this. I like being around kids. I like.
So you obviously like reading.
Do I like? You said obviously.
You obviously had to like reading to like history, because that's. Or did you like reading, or were you just interested enough into history that it just called you to?
Yeah, I like reading.
read.
But I'll give you another story. Is going back to mentorship and going back to when a teacher says a kind word, it changes the course of somebody's life. So I was in high school. I went to a high school with 5,000 kids. We had escalators,
5,000
just huge. And, so I know the kids, but we wasn't rolling with those teachers like that. And but I was sitting in this history class, and I liked the history topics, but I was quiet. I didn't say anything. And the teacher one day said to me, you don't raise your hand a lot and say anything, but when you do, people listen. And that, because no other teacher had ever said, that many kind words. And so that made me feel like, oh, I do have something to say. And what I say contributes. And even to this day, I don't do a lot of talking in meetings, but what I do, I hope that it carries forward. But it was him that said that, because he said that to me, that I was like, and I had such a good experience in history that I said, I'd like to be like that. I want to be that kind of teacher.
Good.
So
Good. Okay. So over in South Dallas, the whole area is being transformed right now.
crazy.
And you came in, you've been 9 years at St. Philip's?
Yeah, 10. It's my
10th year. So at what part, because Dr. Flowers in St. Philip's School and Community Center, and they have a big, you guys, like are leading that charge in the neighborhoods over there, and the new development that's happening over there. What role are you playing in that from your position?
Yeah, so I do two things. One, we're building a performing arts center, which is tied to the school, and so the positive thing about that is just thinking about when we think about kids, especially children of color, all kids, they have many gifts and talents. And when I think sometimes of other schools that, the emphasis is so heavy on math and reading, which those are all important subjects, but kids are creative beings, and they do other things and they excel at other things. And so I feel like it's important for us. That's the whole purpose of the Performing Arts Center. We started to recognize that we do a lot of things for the arts, and we wanted to continue to showcase our students, but then also improve the facilities for them, and opportunities for them. So, I think that's powerful to be happening in South Dallas, that there's an emphasis on arts and creativity, and that's celebrated. And so that's a big portion of where I'm spending my time as they're building the Performing Arts Center. But the other thing that we're doing with community is, from the education standpoint, is that St. Philip's focuses on PBL, which is project-based learning. And project-based learning is a notion that students, they are solving complex problems. And they're doing that while tied to their curriculum and to their instruction. And what we try to do is we try to align it with everyday problems that they see in South Dallas and things like that to make connections. So as they're building and building things on MLK, we've had in the past kids do research and say, what things does South Dallas need, and talk to community members. And so helping the kids start at an early age in this process of service, but community revitalization and pouring
reimagination.
Yeah, and adding to the community, but doing that while hearing the voices of those that live there. So being gentle enough to know that, hey, change needs to happen, but not at the expense of the neighbors that already live there.
Yeah.
So being a part of that.
What are some of the challenges with that? Bringing in the change and not affecting the neighbors in a negative way.
Yeah, it's not affordable. So, you want to come in and build these houses.
And then raise my taxes.
Right, raising the taxes. And then, it doesn't make it affordable. So eventually those families end up having to move out. Or, what I'm seeing in my neighborhood is if your grandmother owns it and then she left it to, the grandkid, and you offering,
take the money.
Right, they taking the money. And then the next thing you get is this, big home. I think St. Philip's is intentional to be sure that while we are revitalizing the community, that the community is what they want.
Yeah.
We're not ousting those who have invested, years there. And there's history and there's culture and there's all those pieces have to stay. And I think what we have, and that's what makes Dr. Fowler so dope, is they need an advocate. Mm-hmm. They need somebody who, like I told, somebody who's going to community meetings, somebody who is speaking to say, we don't want this. This is what we want. This is what the neighborhood needs. We all understand it needs a little paint, but it needs a little touch up,
little Windex.
A little something. But it's been good to a lot of people.
Yeah,
and so because of that, we want to keep it that way.
I interviewed Pastor Chris Simmons, and one of the things that he said, I think this was after the interview. But he was saying that if you think gentrification is a myth, he said, ask the Native Americans. I thought that was powerful.
I mean,
if you think it's a myth, ask the Native Americans.
Ask them. Absolutely.
And it's crazy because sometimes major change is done in small increments. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's like... I read this somewhere, or heard it somewhere, that the spaceship is off course 80% of the time. Mm. It's just the subtle changes that gets them there. So even though gentrification may look like, okay, yeah, it's not. Mm-hmm. But if we're not there to intercept those changes, then it's gonna end up where.
Well, I also think we need to be better about catching it early on. Because, some people, they in for the long game.
That's what I'm saying.
They in the long game.
They're going to the moon. It don't look like they're going to the moon. It doesn't look like they're going to the moon. But if you sit back long enough.
If they little by little, and we just,
generational wealth.
Yes.
Generations.
And they in the long game, and we
don't understand the short game.
We don't understand
the long game.
We awake all the time. Like, look.
Well, I think so many of us are just surviving.
Yes.
And it's kind of hard to think of it's kind of hard to think.
You're right.
It's kind of hard to think of the year.
Yeah.
When you're just trying to get past the month.
Come on.
I mean, and that's so many people's challenge.
It is.
And Like, what's the solution for that?
I don't know.
Solve that problem.
Right. Well,
Principal.
Yeah, I'm like,
Come on, you could do it.
This is what I will say. I think we have to be better about galvanizing that it can't be who gets the credit.
Yeah.
Like if somebody got to get the credit, then we never get together to plan and be purposeful, to try to help. But if that's one thing that I appreciate about Doc Flowers and Pastor Chris is that everybody's working a block from each other now. You know, like the same.
Yeah.
This is like I can walk to Pastor Chris. Yeah. And everybody is working towards
the same goal,
but focus on different pieces.
Yeah.
So like St. Philip's, we don't necessarily do restorative thing. We do preventive, like, so you have a school, food pantry, those types of things. But Pastor Chris will do restorative things like drug rehabilitation, those are after the situation has happened. But the community needs both, and there's room for both. And I think that's the thing that makes that, but everybody's got to believe that he's not stepping in. And when they say, who was instrumental in building up South Dallas, there's room for everybody's name to get called.
But so this is why the podcast and these podcasts like this, you get to record it and you get to look back and say, okay, these are the people who are doing it. But one thing that Pastor Chris said, he said, if you prepare the child, you don't have to spend the time repairing the adult.
That's right.
And I love that. So he's just sticking to me.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's dropping them jewels.
Steal that.
Yeah, if you prepare the child, you don't have to repair the adult.
And that's the truth.
And so many times, so much attention goes on repair.
That's right.
Instead of prepare.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really true. Even when we think about funding
and community,
all this,
everybody's just repairing stuff.
That's right.
But nobody. So if you go and repair it, then you're not preparing.
Right.
Then it's just a matter of time before that window gets busted again.
Yeah. So that makes me think about like, where's the funding for mentoring? Like some of those things that kids need on the front end to prevent some of those things that's happening on the back end.
And a lot of that is volunteer, right? But because you need people.
You need
and if you're calling the people who still focus on the month, it's like I want to, but I mean I got to spend this extra overtime because if I don't, then we're not gonna have lights.
You're right. But then also working with a kid is the long game. You're not gonna see.
Yeah.
You're not gonna see the fruits of your labor. This lady who mentored me, I'm grown now, and just saying, hey, that was really powerful what you did.
And that's preparation.
That's preparation.
You don't really see the preparation.
You don't see it,
but you see the repair.
And I feel better.
And it comes with credit.
Absolutely, it comes with credit.
Preparation
and I feel like I've done something.
Yeah.
If I handed some food out, I feel energized, and this was my service for the week. And I told in one of my classes, they said we want to move from solve to solve. So like SALV to SOLV. Right now, we just putting solve a Band-Aid to, and not that these services aren't needed, but we got to get to move to how do we solve this so we don't have to keep giving.
Yeah. So like your mentor, like all of that preparation, like what, she's not somewhere over there on a billboard, but look at what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Look at what you're doing.
Yep.
You see what I'm saying? So that's I don't know. That's good. Thank you, Pastor Chris, for
right
for that for that little. We went on that little thing. That was good. That was nice little. That felt good, huh? So, as we round up this, is there anything that I haven't asked you that you want to speak on?
I just think.
Well,
first of all-
I do got one more question
Okay.
after that. So
Okay.
go ahead.
But first of all, I think what you're doing is so amazing because I think, you know, even for me, I'm not a Doc Flowers, I'm not a Pastor Chris, but I'm a passionate educator in this community, and I think there are a lot of passionate people who are doing small things.
Passionate educator.
Yeah, who are
I'm
doing.
getting all these terms. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I gotta speak it so I can remember it. Yeah.
But they're doing
Passionate
small
educator.
things that make big impact.
One thing I want to ask before we get off the show, before we end it, is what is your vision for the community you serve, and beyond?
Yeah, I think my vision is for us to, one, kind of going back to what Pastor Chris said, is to do enough for young people that some of the challenges that we had, they don't have, or giving them the tools to be able to make it through some of the trauma that they experience. I think that we're doing kids a disservice if we're not giving them the tools to. Life is not easy. It's going to be hard, but when it gets hard, these are the tools that you have, and the people around you, and the community around you, that helps you to be successful. And I think so. My vision for the community in which I serve is intentionality from the people that do know, and the people that do have. You know, we can't all move out, or we can't all, you know, like we can't all say it's the next man's responsibility, especially people of color. And I know our lives are tough, but some of us is doing, it's up to me.
That's right.
And some of us are doing, you know, and we thriving, but we not giving back, and we're not, you know, giving up our time, and you know, and other people are. And they'll give their money and they'll come back, but you know, that's one of the things we always say. Where are people serving?
Yeah.
You know, where they at? And so making sure that I would feel great if I saw more of that in our community, and that people saw that, you know, no hate on Frisco and Allen and all those things. I think that's great. And if you got the wealth to move out there, but you got there on somebody back. So come on, help the next man.
Yeah.
So
speaking of helping, where can people give to St. Philip's, and where can they, if they want to donate, or where can they reach out? Where can they reach out to?
Yeah.
Give them, speak into this camera and just tell them how to get a hold of you if they want to volunteer, if they want to give.
Yeah.
And if they want to come and check out the school and bring their little ones.
Yep. So if you're looking at St. Philip's, we tell everybody come and take a tour, because I think we can say a lot on a podcast or say a lot, but it's so different when you get there. So we're at, you know, Dr. Flowers always says the other White House, 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. And then St. Philip's, 1600.org is always a place where you can follow us, you can donate. One of the things that we have on the horizon, always North Texas Giving Day, but every year we just added 7th and 8th grade. And last year's 8th grade group went to Ghana. That's their culminating trip. And it was so powerful. So this group is going again. And if you love to sponsor a kid as they travel there, we believe that education happens outside of the classroom. So every grade level goes on academic excursions, what we call them. But 8th grade focuses on leadership. And last year they did a lot of serving, they did a lot of learning, and it was just an awesome trip to culminate their entire experience at St. Philip's. And what better way to say that we serve here in our community, in our country, but we also serve globally. And we learn outside of the classroom. So if you're interested in St. Philip Speaks to you, we love to have any help. Always volunteers, tutors, any way you want to contribute based off your gifts and talents, we're open, looking forward to anybody that's interested.
That's beautiful. I appreciate you for taking your time out, coming on the show, and just being vulnerable, sharing, your personal stories. And I just believe that there's power in the stories that we tell. The Bible says there's power in your testimony. You know, I mean, it says it different, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, that's a Walter Johnson.
Yeah.
version.
Look, if Dr. Tony Evans can have a commentary, I can have a couple
right.
verses
That's your,
that I can hold.
That's your version.
Yeah, right. So I appreciate you for coming, and
Appreciate y'all.
yeah, thank you, and we'll have you back.
All right.
Yeah. So thank you guys for listening to the podcast. Go serve. Reach out to some of these people. You have the website, and continue listening to the podcast. Until next time, peace.
Southside 457.